Welcome to Storytime at the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois. Today's story comes to us from Europe, from a small country called Wales. This is the story of a very good neighbor. Once there was a little old man and a little old woman, and they lived alone in their house together. It was a small house. It really only had one room and then a small cupboard area on the side for the bedroom. And they lived very comfortably there together, even though they had wished to have children and they never had. But they were all right. Clearly they were able to help people in the neighborhood as best they could. And, well, every night for supper, the little old woman would make a good, strong, tasty vegetable stew. And she would peel up the potatoes, and she would take those potato peelings, and because back in those days they didn't have any trash cans or any trash people to come and pick up the trash, she would drop them in a bucket, slop. And then she would peel up the carrots, and she would drop those in the bucket, slop. And then she would peel the onions, and she would put the onion peelings in the bucket, slop. And then she would make the stew. And when they were done eating their stew, the little old woman would wash the dishes. And when she was done with the dishes, she would take the dirty dishwater. They didn't have sinks, so she couldn't just pour it down the drain. She would pour it into the slop bucket. And then she would say, "Husband, I'm done with the dishes. It's time to take out the slop bucket." And the little old man would come over and he would pick up the bucket. Now, with all the potato peelings and the carrot peelings and the onion peelings and all the dirty dishwater in it, it was pretty heavy. And so he would open the front door of the house, and he would pick up the slop bucket, and he would walk out the front door of the house. 1 step, 2 steps, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And he would get to the fence, to the wall, the stone wall that ran along the edge of the front yard. And he would take that bucket and he would dump it over the front yard fence, slop, out onto the front walk, out onto the front grass area there. Well, he did that every single day for quite some time, until one day he brought the bucket out to the front of the house. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And he picked up the bucket and he threw it over the wall, and he heard a little voice say, "I really wish you wouldn't do that." What was that? He looked around and he couldn't see anyone. "Is there someone there? I really wish you wouldn't do that. Down here." And he looked down, and there was a wee little man standing in front of him on the ground. And he said, "I really wish you wouldn't throw your slops on my house." Well, the little old man, he was very puzzled, because he threw his slops over the wall. And he looked over the wall, and he just saw the pile of slops lying there. And he said, "Well, I throw my slops over the wall, neighbor. I don't think I throw them on your house." And the little old man, the wee little man said, if you would see with my eyes, step on my foot, and then look again." So the little old man, he very carefully stepped with his big foot on the wee little man's foot, just gently, and then he looked over the wall. And when he looked, he was so surprised, for what he saw there was a wee little house with potato peelings and carrot peelings and onion peelings draped all over the roof and on the chimney, and dirty dishwater running out the front door, because he had poured the slop bucket right down the little man's chimney. He said, "Oh, my friend neighbor, I am so sorry. I didn't realize. I'll tell my wife, and, well, we'll think of something." And so he went back in the house, and he told the little old woman everything that had happened, how every day he poured his slops over the wall, and they went right down the wee little man's chimney, and his poor wife had to sweep the dirty dishwater out of her house every single day. And the little old woman said, Oh, that poor woman. Well, we'll have to think of something so that we're not dumping our slops down their chimney anymore. And so they thought, and they thought, and they thought. And the little old man said, well, what would really be the best is if we put the slop somewhere else. But the bucket is so heavy. I can only get to the front wall. I can't get to the back wall to throw them over the back wall in the backyard. And they thought some more. The little old woman said, I know what we need. We need another door in the house, one that goes out the back wall, so that you can go out the back door and take the bucket to the back wall and throw the slops over the back wall, and that then we won't be throwing them into the little man's house. And the little old man said, well, yes, that would work. The problem is, wife, if we get the carpenter to come out and put a door in the back wall of the house, that will be very expensive, and we don't have a whole lot of money. And his wife said, well, you know, I've been putting by a little bit of the egg money and the milk money every month. I think perhaps we might have enough money to pay the carpenter to come and put a new door in the wall. And so the very next day, they did. They paid the carpenter, and he came to the house, and slip, slap, snap, he put a door in the wall. It was very easy for him to do. And he put the new door in the wall. And so that night, after the little old woman had peeled her potatoes and her carrots and her onions and put the peelings in the bucket, slop, she made up the stew, and they ate their delicious vegetable stew. And then she washed all the dishes, and she put the dirty dishwater into the bucket, and she said, husband, it's time to take out the slop bucket. And so he came, and he picked up that bucket, and he opened the back door, and he walked out the back door 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 steps to the back wall, and he poured the bucket over the back wall. Slop! And he stopped, and he listened, and he heard a voice say, thank you, neighbor. And then he turned, and he went back into the house, and he told his wife, it worked. The back door worked. Now, you might be a little bit worried about the old man and the old woman because they used up all of their savings to put that door into the back of their house. But every night after that, when they would open the door to take the bucket of slops out, a small gold coin would roll in. Clink, 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 clink. And it was a gift from one good neighbor to another. And that is the tale of the slop bucket from Wales. I hope you enjoyed it. And we will see you again on Friday at 3 p.m. from the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois for another story. See you then.